Good weather. What? Good weather.
Ashfield in the county of Franklin. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to and in town fairs to meet at the town hall in St. Ashfield on Saturday the 4th day of May 2013 at 10 o'clock in the morning, then and there after the following article. And you are directed to serve this form by posting up a tested copy thereof at the Ashfield Town Hall in the Ashfield Post Office in said town, 7 days at least before the time of holding this meeting. Hereof will not admit 2 returns of form which are buildings thereon to the town clerk at the time of this meeting, as foresaid. Given this day of the ordinances, 22nd day of April, year of the Lord 2013, signed by Thomas Carter, Paula Cooper, and Ron Kohler, Ashfield Select Board. A true copy attested by our Constable, Elizabeth Bashore, and posted 11 days before the date of the meeting as well as directed on April 23rd, 2013.
We're off to a good start. Our warrant was legally posted, so that's a good start. Anyone who is in the hall who is not a registered voter, please, thank you for raising your hand, and you're sitting in a fine place. So I just ask you to please refrain from voting on any matter. If you'd like to speak, we'll ask permission of the meeting to allow you to speak, and so you'll catch my attention. And welcome. Traditionally, we advance Article 1 before we take care of some of the other business and introductions we have to do, so that we can open the polls downstairs and people who are downstairs waiting to vote can get their votes on the ballot done. Is there any objection to advancing Article 1 so that the vote can be made? No. Hearing no objection, I'm looking for a motion from the floor, from the meeting. The town opened the polls to choose a moderator and 3 wardens, both for 1-year terms, a select board member, a board of assessors member, 2 finance committee members, a board of health member, 2 constables, a park commissioner, a school committee member, a sewer commissioner, all for 3 years, a planning board member, a library trustee for 5-year terms, and a finance committee member for an unexpired term of 2 years, and to vote on the following question. Quote, shall the town of Ashfield be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so called, the amounts required to pay for the purchase of a highway grader? Does anyone wish to so move? So move. Do I hear a second? Second. Okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor of opening the polls, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Constable, is there a report on the condition of the ballot box?
Yes, I checked the ballot box. It is empty and back to 0. As far as I'm concerned, the poll can be open.
Thank you very much. The polls are open. I'd like at this time to identify the people at the front table.
New job. Yep.
Nancy Dunn, our able clerk. Next to her, Mary Fitzgerald Gibbons. I don't know how that happened. Our administrative assistant, also quite here. Our select board chair, Tom Carter. Paulette Lucart, select board member. Ron Kohler, select board member. From the finance committee, Janet Rogers. Chairman Ted Murray. Tom Schreiber, Ricky Carroll, and David Newell. These folks have worked very hard to get us to this moment, and I really appreciate their efforts. So, I'd also like to identify the tellers who will be counting in the event that we need their services. Nina Kohler, Marcine Eisenberg, Betty Stewart, Faye Whitney, Lynn Taylor, Sandy Lilly, Virginia Wiswell, that ought to take care of us for the day. They've all been sworn in, and we're very grateful for their service as well. As is our tradition at this moment, I'd like to ask that we remember the members of our families, friends, and our neighbors who have passed since our last annual town meeting. And if you can stand, would you please stand as I read their names? Elizabeth Lee, Stephen Greenman, Marion Fisher-Turk, Phyllis M. Hathaway, Edworth Woodall Gins, Anthony J. Virgilio, Lois Brain, Jane Geiger Parati, Cynthia Kavanagh, Richard Arthur Powers, Marguerite Lewis Barry, Milton E. Rice, Eleanor Lazarus, Carol Samashian. Please take a moment to reflect on what they've given to our community. Thank you. This is your favorite part. As required by our bylaws, I'll now read the bylaws governing the conduct of the annual town meeting. May 24th, 1849, Code of Bylaws. All persons present at any town meeting shall, while the meeting is open, be seated when requested by the presiding officer, if there be sufficient seats therefore. If not, they shall stand at the west end of the hall. When anyone addresses the chair, he shall rise and stand uncovered during his speaking. No one shall stand in front of the chair or around the moderator's stand when votes are being counted or given, except they are called upon to do so by the chair. There shall be no talking about the house while business is being done, and all shall keep silent at the request of the chair. No one shall speak on the same question more than twice without leaving the meeting, or to explain or call to order. No one shall interrupt another while speaking, except to call him to order. When several motions are made in regard to the same subject relating to the sums of money, numbers, or time, the question shall be first put upon on the largest sum or number and the longest time. In any other cases, no new motion shall be made while one is pending, except as an amendment, or to commit or to adjourn. When a vote decided by the moderator is questioned, it shall be made certain by persons on either side rising and standing in their places, uncovered until counted by the moderator or tellers appointed by him. The reports of all committees relating to money or property shall be in writing. All motions and amendments shall be in writing when required by the chair or by any person. No person shall be allowed to move the reconsideration of any vote unless he is voting for a majority or not voted at all. No peddling or smoking shall be allowed in the hall during the meeting. This code of bylaws shall be read by the presiding officer or town clerk at each annual meeting. Thank you. The warrant this year contains 28 articles. We want every voter to know what he or she is being asked to vote on. So rather than reading each article as it appeared in the warrant, which you have, we've learned that we can save time by calling the article and then hearing only the motion that we're being asked to act upon. This makes sense, especially since meeting members have been given copies of the warrant, so you'll have notice of the posted article. By dispensing with that preliminary reading, we're reserving more time to do the town's essential business. So my question is, does any member of this meeting object to waiving the reading of the posted article and hearing only the actual motion? Hearing no objections, that is how we'll proceed. Finally, I understand there are video recordings and audio recordings being made of the meeting. Under Massachusetts law, you have a right to know that, so I'm disclosing that to you at this time. So thank you. Is there a motion on Article 2?
Mr. Moderator.
Dr. Gold.
Thank you. David Gold, Bronson Avenue. I'll make a motion to accept all of the published reports with the following exceptions. Page 18, Board of Health. Delete the second sentence of the penultimate paragraph. For those who are not dictionaries, that means the next to the last. Page 11 to 12, the report of the Select Board, to reject this report in its entirety and direct the Select Board to publish a revised report in the Ashfield News prior to the next special town meeting, at which time it may be approved.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. So let me just be clear. What should happen, we should have put the acceptance on the floor and then moved an amendment. But what I understand the motion to be is that we accept the reports with the two exceptions that Dr. Gold spoke to, one on page 18 regarding the Board of Health, and the other on pages 11 and 12, the report of the Select Board. Discussion. discussing a motion to amend. That's the goal.
Is it a motion to amend, or is that the actual
A
motion?
motion to amend.
Okay.
What we should have done is put the acceptance on the floor and then a motion to amend. So we're going to treat it as acceptance is on the floor with your amendment, which has been seconded. So we'll hear about your amendment.
Procedure is proper. We're on amendment then. Okay. I read the report of the select board, which I'll address first, with disappointment and dismay. My first objection is to the legitimacy of this report. The published report seems to have been produced without following an agreed protocol that was reported both in the Ashfield News in March and in the online minutes. There seemed to have been a discussion between one of the select board members and another about putting names in, and Mr. Carter was going to present a third report. In the online minutes of that February 18th meeting, at which Ms. Lucart said publishing names would pit citizen against citizen, which is what I object to. Mr. Carter said he'd do it. The online minutes have a handwritten note saying that those minutes were approved on February 25th. However, number one, there's no meeting minutes for February 25th at all. There's minutes of a meeting that was held at Mohawk on February 20th that did not discuss it. There's no evidence that Mr. Carter ever presented something other than what ended up getting published here, only under his name, not under the name of the entire select board. So, is this a purposeful strategy to pit us against one another? I thought the Puritans gave up the pillory long ago. I also believe there are federal laws protecting whistleblowers. I also concur with President Bush number 43 that the term citizen is a term of honor and respect. When our elected officials disrespect our citizens, there's a problem. And when the Attorney General agrees with various charges, is vilifying the diligent watchdogs of our democracy the correct response. Like the editor of this Ashfield News, I'm a fan of MeTV. I like Perry Mason, who might object to parts of this report as, and you recognize the word, incompetent, irrelevant, and immaterial. And also the reference to Mr. Field's resignation letter is hearsay. Minor but insignificant points of my objection. Number one, the reference to sons and daughters of Ashfield. I note that both Suzanne Corbett and Doug Field are multi-generationally heritage Ashfield citizens. The latter, Mr. Field gets depicted as a hero, Ms. Corbett gets depicted as a nuisance. The last time I referred to the references to ancestry and heritage here, whether or not you go back to the Mayflower, I remember somebody came up with the term that we are Ashfield citizens as legal immigrants, by birth and by choice. And I think that covers all of us. Number two, electronic support for administrative tasks. I too was here in 1984 when Eleanor Ward was shy of computers. Now she ran this place with an iron hand. We voted to buy a database program that year and to spend money for professional staff to set it up for the assessors, which was the most pressing problem at that time. Next year she became more comfortable and we voted for a computer. In the records you'll find I was the one who made those motions. In the March Ashfield News here, Mr. Carter says he opposes softening our staff burdens with an electronic solution. I don't know that being a Luddite in 2013 is a good position. Mr. Carter cites an 800% increase in the request for information, and he doesn't tell us what that is. Is that 8 requests instead of 1, 16 instead of 2, 32 instead of 4? They all add up to 800%. Exactly how many requests for records does it take to paralyze our professional staff? I don't know how many are involved, but it's somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 that we are paying people when they get paralyzed by some request for information. Is the high price of public information requests merely a reflection of how we choose not to manage our information? We can scan documents, have them easily printed or emailed, and we can have efficient and accurate filing of hard copies. It would cost less than what we seem to be doing now. It would certainly cost a lot less than legal fees. And as might having various tapes of these meetings professionally transcribed as addenda to the current minutes, we get more and more terse. We just say motion, motion, motion.
Dr. Gold, generally the rule of thumb is 2 minutes. You're at 5.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Reasoning with the unreasonable. Guess that depends on your perspective. It turns out that some of the people who thought that our public officials were unreasonable got validated by the Attorney General, and disturbing the mellow mindset of the officials is the primary goal. However, the most significant and final is what is the correct response to being confronted with wrongdoing? Every school child knows the protocol. When you do something wrong, you admit it, you apologize, you promise not to do it again, and then you try and keep that promise. When the Attorney General tells us we've erred, what shall we do? I would have expected that this report might have said, before my election, Mr. Carter might have said, there were complaints, the Attorney General cited us, and using all my past experience on the Select Board, I've reviewed all the documents, spoken with all the people, and now presented a proposal for new policies, protocols, procedures, and guidelines to bring Ashfield into compliance with state law. I would also expect that the Select Board would take leadership by requiring that all our officials attend the upcoming FERCOG seminar on open meeting law rather than making it optional. Kenny would have listed our accomplishments and we would have moved on. This report reads more like an op-ed piece than a two-town report and seems to defend the right to do wrong. Is this the best we can respect? For all these reasons, I urge the town to reject the report of the Select Board, request a revised version, and have an opportunity to approve it at another town meeting. Regarding the Board of Health report, deletions of the names of the complainants, when neither the reasons for the complaints nor the actions of the Attorney General are reported, seems a prudent act. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. I gave the mover of the motion 7 minutes to explain. Generally speaking, we limit comments to 2 minutes. So, and later you'll hear as other motions happen, we'll give a little bit more for some further discussion. Mr. Carter. By the way, I made a mistake because I forgot that by not handing Dr. Golday a microphone, then the folks downstairs couldn't hear what he said. So from now on, I'll ask him to please speak into a microphone.
Well, I want to start out, and I'm sure I speak for a great many town officials, that it's heartening to know that people actually read the reports in the town report after they've spent so much time preparing. The town report, Select Board, you can go back through a great many Select Board reports where only the chairman signs them. Writing this report wasn't easy, but for someone that doesn't see the chaos and turmoil that brought about my election in February, and what had happened for the 12 months or 7 or 8 months anyway prior to with the Select Board and other boards, I think was either looking through rose-colored glasses or truly pulling some type of Rip Van Winkle, just not paying attention. That doesn't make this report, even though it's quite pointed, doesn't make it any less true. I will admit that when you ask me to author something, there could very well be a bit of sarcasm in it, but it's sharp, it's to the point. Paulette and I had a discussion when I brought the draft and she looked at it, and I admitted that it is blunt, but it's to the point, and I think a lot of people should be there should be very few people that can't understand where it came from and where we're trying to go. Ms. Lugart said it was worse than blunt, it was harsh. But I'll tell you, upon reflection of this report, I think the true word is that it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing how last year town officials treated each other. It's embarrassing the way citizens treated town employees that were trying to do their very best, and town officials doing the same. I think it was particularly embarrassing that when I came on the board, first meeting, February 6th, one select board member brings a draft of a select board meeting, select board report, and the other member wouldn't spend 5 minutes going over that and reflecting upon it. A week or two later, that other select board member brings a report that the other one wouldn't look at. And then it got charged for Tom Carter to write the report, and this is the report that I published. That type of dysfunction is embarrassing to the town of Ashfield. But that does not make this report any less true about what happened over the prior year and where we're going to now.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes. Clark. Thank you.
Susan Clark, Clark Road. I'm a member of the Board of Health, and I just want to speak to the portion of the report regarding the Board of Health. The names of the people who submitted open meeting law violations were published in the report. This is public information. All of these complaints are on the Ashfield website. You can look at them, you can read the reports, you can read the responses. I don't see any problem with submitting this report as it is. It's just a statement of fact.
Thank you. We are speaking to the proposed amendments to the acceptance of the report. Any further comments?
Yeah.
Questions? Yes, Carol.
I'm Rick Carroll, Main Street.
Is that on?
Yeah. That's sort of the way we hear from down here too.
Okay.
All right, this might take more than 2 minutes too, because I just about had it. I've been at the board meetings for probably 4 to 5 years before they changed it to Mondays where I can't come. And I see maybe 3 or 4 people that go on a regular basis. The rest of what I hear in town is hearsay from one person talking to another out on the street. And I'm sorry, but I totally agree with David on this. And I think David's really courageous to stand up and finally say the truth in town. Because what happens on the select board, people read the recorder and think that the recorder is telling the truth of what happened at the select board meeting with the last select board that we had. It wasn't telling the truth. It was making up a story to get people to read it, just like everything else in town. And what's embarrassing to me is that people don't go to the meetings. Look at this, there's about 50 people here in our town meeting today. And we want to make up our decisions and our judgments against our neighbors without being there. I don't think it's right.
The amendment.
Well, it is an amendment, because I agree with David, and I think that we really need to start coming to the meetings and participating in our town government and not just listening to people. Feel like listening outside of the meeting and believe their position is true without any regard for what actually happens at the meeting. I think that we have a really difficult situation, and I think that what was written in this book is absolutely ridiculous. I think that it's unfair to people who are our neighbors, no matter what our neighbors think, no matter what position that they take. It's absolutely absurd that we put it into a format like this. And I totally agree with David and support him. I think he's very courageous, and I want to say thank you personally.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. At the select board meeting last week on Monday, the 29th, I would once again made it clear to the 2 other select board members that I was totally in disagreement. I found this report for the select board, at least the beginning portion, where it cites people and calls them out, that I found it to be unacceptable, improper to do to fellow members of the town, for whatever reason. I also found it to be unprofessional, and I also found it to be lacking leadership we should be giving, and the report should have been redirecting us to indicate that we had done wrong, that had citizens file open meeting law complaints, and we were found to be in error, then we should take corrective steps. And we should not be so defensive. That is not good leadership. So I would agree with Mr. Gold, and I thank you very much for presenting that, because mine was a lone voice. Thank you.
And we appreciate your voice.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Mr. Moderator, may I respond to something?
Let me see if there's anybody who hasn't spoken.
Okay.
Mr. Brown.
There are a lot of things in the town report that I don't like. I don't like the budget, but unfortunately, it's what we have to spend to run the town. And I'm sure that there are other things that I might find that I disagree with. However, there are certain things we need to do. There are certain truths that need to be told. And if it's a matter of courage, I commend Mr. Carter for having the courage to state what did happen and who is responsible for it. It's not as if the names came as a surprise to anyone. They have been published well before. There have been people who have been under attack in this town. I can attest to that. I've been one of them. And the kind of complaints and problems that were presented, some of them were very, very minor infractions. Some of them were presented by people who know more about common law than they do about common decency and common sense. And it's time that we face up to what is going on, we say what is going on, we identify the people that are making it happen, and we try to get this back on a sensible track. I don't believe that Mr. Carter is the first person to initiate personal attacks. That has been happening for quite a while, and I'm fully aware of a lot of the people who have been the cause of it. The report is what it is. The report, whether you like it or not, contains a description of what has gone on, and it contains information that I think is important for the town to have. So I stand in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you. I see somebody else. Mr. Cole. Right next.
Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't work. This Brittany's wasn't working. Yeah, it's on. What? This works. Okay. I'm Ron Kohler, and to say that we went through a tumultuous time would be an understatement. It was very difficult. I had no idea what I was about to face the first 6 months of being a select board member. But transparency is a two-pane window, or one-pane window, but you can see through both sides. And as much as it's the right of a citizen to file an open meeting law complaint, transparency allows for the citizens to understand what the various boards are facing. You can go downstairs and you can look through a notebook at all the open meeting law complaints or all the requests for public information and see the amount of work that was required and the effort required to respond and to deal with those. Minor infractions, in my opinion, many of them, some of them unfounded. However, it's taken a lot of time and legal expense, and you're footing the bill for legal expense. And to the extent that volunteers stand up and continue to volunteer with a lot of open meeting law complaints and document requests is a function of how well this town is going to operate. I was given the charge by the select board to write the first note to the annual report. And I did it in what I thought was a very factual way. And Paulette didn't appreciate it, and she wrote one that I didn't appreciate. And so when Tom came in, I think it was his first meeting or so, he had to face this diametrically opposed opinion, and yet this thing had to get published. It was very important that it get published. So this is what it is. And although it's not the one I wrote, I do support it. I think it's well written.
I see your hand, Dr. Gold. I did not know this was coming when I woke up this morning. Dr. Robertson, I see you. I'm just consulting town meeting time, which is sort of a how-to guide for town officials in matters, and has reports of town committees, agencies, departments, etc. And I'm going to, many towns it's traditional to insert in the warrant an article, quote, to hear and to act on the reports of town officers, boards, and committees. Not infrequently, nothing happens. I'm skipping some blah blah under this article. And the meeting takes no action and passes on to the next article. Sometimes this is an occasion for the chairman of a special committee to make a progress report. Concrete action can be taken under this kind of article, and occasionally what it is when a motion is offered that is not necessarily, it goes on to say it asks for you to ratify an action described in the report or authorization of an action proposed. Otherwise, it says the report is a report whether the town accepts it or not. It's still the report of the body which passed it. Was this passed by the select board? This report? Was it acted on by the board as a board?
I was charged with publishing the report.
Were you authorized by the select board to publish the report? Okay. So it seems to me that whether we accept it or not, it's the report if Mr. Carter was authorized and directed by the select board to author a report. So this says it's a report whether the town accepts it or not. It also goes on to say that there can be an amendment if it's directing somebody to do something. Then we can move on whether or not we wish to ratify that directive. Was this report directing somebody to do something?
Yes.
Dr. Dole, I give you. Please rise. And by the way, can we remember to say our names and where we live?
You want me to?
Yes, please.
Yes. Hello? My amendment is directing the select board to produce a better report that does not pit citizen against citizen and that contains truth. I do not find any, these people there was some nodding, Tom was authorized to write a report, but the Ashfield News and the minutes of the select board both say that Tom was going to present that report to the board, and we have heard that the board did not ratify it.
I'm sorry.
That was my point number one.
I'm sorry. Did the report as directed a thing be done? That's what it says right here. The question is whether or not you're asking for ratification of an action described in the report. In the nature of the motion. Or authorization of an action to close.
I think that the entire report is an action. I think it's a vile action against our citizens. How you solve a problem depends on how you define it. You have a cough. You have a cough and you get cough syrup, or you go get an x-ray and find out that you have cancer. If your kid is crying, do you say stop crying, or you find out if the diaper is whether the kid is hungry? How you solve it depends on it. The problem from their point of view is that people complain. From my point of view as an observer, the problem is that there was something to complain about. The Attorney General also seemed to agree that there was something to complain about. I've heard about the legal costs. This report says that there should be an action of expecting increased legal expenses this year. This is a statement saying basically, we're not going to change what we do. We're going to keep doing the same complain and you're going to pay the legal bill. That's not the way to solve the problem. Also, Tom said that everything in the report is true. I'm going to speak to one thing. The selfish.
Hang on. My question.
My last thing, please. My last thing is the selfish. This is an error of fact. He says that that's true. There's an error of fact. He says Board of Health members are selfless servants who volunteer. No. All these people are elected public officials. Every one of them allowed themselves to be nominated, accepted to have their name put on a ballot, accepted the fact that they were elected, and they accept salaries. They're not serving selflessly. If you want to have selfless public officials, as you go through the warrant here, vote against them having salaries.
Thank you, Dr. Gold. Dr. Robinson. Is the amendment to
First of all, I want to thank, I'm Don Robinson on Norton Hill Road. I want to thank David and Ricky and Paulette for their courage in speaking to this meeting on a very sensitive subject. The report has been characterized as vile and embarrassing. I was thinking of a different term. It's painful. It's very, very painful, and it reflects several months of pain in this town. Felt by all too many people, those who volunteered for various service in town, and for the members of the select board, and just widely in town. I remember the special meeting downstairs where we anteed up the money to pay for it, and the pain that there was at that meeting, and sadly, no extended defense of what we were spending it for and the justification for it, which I called for, and there was no one there to speak to it, sadly, to address those questions. As far as the report itself is concerned, I'm thinking of regime change in countries around the world where, in the best of them, a commission on truth and reconciliation is appointed to go over the crimes, so to speak, or whatever they were, of the previous regime, and getting it out and talking about it and getting it addressed accurately, and then proceeding to reconciliation. As far as I am concerned, we had to go through this moment. It is painful, but I think that the report of the Select Board, Tom Carter's report, showed courage. It was painful. It was, I think, accurate as far as I know what went on, and it clears the deck for reconciliation, which is what we have before us as the task in this town. I think this has been a good discussion, but I think the amendment must be rejected, and the report stands as an accurate account of what happened, painful as it was.
Thank you. Ms. Dahl.
Lynn Dole, Conway Road. I move the question.
Okay, question of whether or not to amend Article 2, accepting the reports, has been moved and seconded. This will not allow debate. This requires a 2/3 majority to cut off discussion. All those in favor of stopping discussion on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion carries. We're back to the main motion, whether or not to accept the town reports as they appear in your...
Now you got to vote on the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the amendment. It's only 11:15, and I made 2 mistakes already. I promise it won't be my last. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Point of order?
But just clarification, can you read the amendment as it's submitted again, please?
Sure, I'll read it. The motion is to accept all published reports with the following exceptions. Page 18, Board of Health, delete the second sentence of the penultimate paragraph. Pages 11 and 12, report of the Select Board, to reject this report in its entirety and direct the Select Board to publish a revised report in the Ashfield News prior to the next special town meeting, at which time it may be approved. Thank you for your vote. All those in favor of that amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. The proposed amendment is rejected. We go back to the main motion. Now we can go back to the main motion, which is to accept the town report. The reports of the town officers. All in favor of accepting the reports of the town officers, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
The motion carries. The reports are accepted. Thank you for the discussion. Article 3. Is there a motion, town, set the salary compensation for all elected officials of the town, select board, board of assessors, board of health, moderator, tree warden, and constable, as provided by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 108, to be made effective as of July 1st, 2013, as contained in the budget. Do I hear a motion so moved from the floor? I heard it so moved. I don't know where it came from. Is there a second? Moved and second. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor of setting that salary compensation for those officers, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Article 4, do I hear a motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Ms. Gardner.
I move that the town authorize the town treasurer, with the approval of the select board, to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of the revenue for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2013, in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 4, and to renew any note or notes as may be given for a period of less than 1 year, in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 17.
Very good information.
Yes, sorry. This is really for the purpose of when the town needs to do some short-term borrowing during the course of the year.
Is there a recommendation to the finance committee?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yes, unanimously. Thank you. Article 5, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate $80,000 and transfer from free cash the sum of $55,000 and to borrow up to $150,000 for a total of $285,000 for the purpose of purchasing a highway grader, provided, however, that no amount shall be borrowed or expended hereunder unless and until the town votes at an election to exempt from the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 21C, Proposition 2 1/2, so called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds and notes therefore.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Carter, would you like to explain this?
Sure. The Finance Committee, which I was a part of in my prior life, and the Select Board for several years, probably a half a dozen to 10 years, have seen the headlights of a new grader coming down the tunnel. I mean, there have been projections of when we need to replace equipment and so forth. And we knew that it was going to be a big expense. At the same time, we're looking at things like loaders and fire trucks, which you can view downstairs, and those sorts of capital expenditures. And actually, the grader, I would say, has been put off for at least the last 3 or 4 years. The grader that we have now is a 1985. That the town took possession of that grader immediately after the flood in the spring of 1987. Those of us that were here know the damage and the work that needed to be done then. The grader probably saw as much work in the first 3 years, in my estimation, as it probably saw the 10 years after that, where we put roads together, tore them apart, so we could put them back together again the right way. But it's time. It's time. So we've got a machine that we've had for over 25 years now. It's It's not quite 30 years old yet. But the opportunity with the finances of the town right now make it an opportune time to replace the grader, as long as you figure at some point you've got to buy a new grader. We are blessed with a certain amount, in my experience, an extraordinary amount of free cash this year, which I don't expect to happen again until the planets align. We have ridiculously low rates that we can borrow money for the town, and the borrowing that we're projecting for the town, borrowing $150,000 and paying for it over 3 years at less than 1% interest, more than likely, would have no effect on our tax rate, because about the same time, at the same time that we are incurring this debt to be paid off, we're paying off the debt for a highway truck. And then the following year, we'll be paying off the debt on the fire truck. So freeing up $50,000 from one makes it available to spend on the other. But then there's a reason why this is a debt exclusion and not a 2.5 override, is that it's for a specific purpose and a specific time frame. You want me to talk about the budget in general while we're here?
Why don't we, this isn't, any objection to hearing an overview about the budget right now? Or should we continue our focus on this article?
Just a question.
Yeah.
Is this a new vehicle or a used?
Right, we're projecting is a brand new.
I would just like to, I think it's a good time to go over the overall budget so that you know in the context of this article what we're looking at generally. I do want to point out, however, that this will require a 2/3 majority on this article here. Downstairs, the ballot question for a debt exemption, debt exclusion, which exempts us from Proposition 2.5, will only require a simple majority that will authorize the town to incur in the short term debt such as this in excess of the levy limit. But to do this one will require a 2/3 supermajority by you. Just wanted to point that out. So, you'll review.
Well, we get about 25 chances to talk about the budget here in the next few hours, to pull the budget apart and talk about the specifics. In my mind, I kept thinking that when we were putting this budget together, that it was going together too easy. But with some cuts and not spending quite so much in general government in some places, and having some other extraordinary expenses that didn't show up, we were able to fit everything within the levy limit. With Proposition 2.5, you can only increase the amount of money you're raising by taxation by 2.5% each year, which in our case is about $77,000. That's how much our budget is able to expand in a year under the provisions of that law. So our projections are with this budget, we're going to have the select board budget today is $4,116,000, give or take a few thousand at that point, which would leave us a difference that we actually would have about $7,000 in the levy that nobody's anxious to raise. The key word in this whole discussion is budget. I mean, we're trying to hit the bullseye, but we're not exactly sure where it is. What's particularly remarkable this year is that we're funding the town, we're staying within the levy, and we're not really using any amount of free cash for operating expenses. And as I mentioned before, we have been blessed this year with what seems extraordinarily high free cash from my experience. At the end of this budget, and being able to fund the purchase of a highway grader, hopefully, we're going to be doing some remarkable things. Purchasing a grader, nearly doubling the amount in our stabilization fund, going from $216,000 in our stabilization to $416,000. Free cash, we'll still have about $55,000 worth of free cash available for expenses expenses or projects that come up that we haven't budgeted for. And we haven't touched the Red Cross fund and those types of things. So the budget comes together well. Some may say, well, why are we borrowing money if we're able to put this huge amount into stabilization? And the reason is that we want to build stabilization up so it does exactly what that fund is designed to do, which over time, as we look at future capital projects, future needs of the town, we can go to stabilization so we don't have huge spikes in the tax rate and have to ask for overrides to take care of putting new roofs on or renovations to the town hall or whatever it may be. There is one point that everyone needs to be aware of, and another reason for putting this money into stabilization is that we've incurred a debt of $195,000, right in that neighborhood, for Hurricane Irene. That's a debt that the state allowed us to incur in anticipation of reimbursement from FEMA and MEMA. It's at very low interest rate, 0.59, I believe, percent. And we can roll that over until the state and federal government come up with that money. Ron and Paulette were able to go to a meeting and spoke to our representative who really felt that over the next 2 years we would get that reimbursement. But it's something to be aware of, that cloud is there, and I'm sure will be nice when that's paid off and that debt's taken care of. But we're encouraged right now that it will be taken care of. So.
Thank you. So hopefully we have Article 5 in respect to Article Collins. But first, with respect to Article 5, which is, again, estimates the paper is greater for a total of $285,000, $150,000 by borrowing pursuant to the debt exclusion, $55,000 from free cash, and $80,000 from taxation. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Schreiber.
The Finance Committee recommends this with a vote of 3 to 1 to 0. My colleague David Newell would like to speak to the one vote.
Mr. Newell, would you like to speak to the one?
Thank you. David Newell from City Lane. The case for the grader has been made, and we do need the grader. Objection has nothing to do with that. The word research and preparation of a financial plan was good. It's been sound. It makes sense. It should be done. But my public dissent is only to let something remain in the record, and I think we all are perhaps in agreement in principle on the point, and that is that we as a Finance Committee, perhaps as the board, have not done a good job in terms of giving you good information early on. Several citizens approached me and said, we have had no information. We're going to have a ballot vote. We have not been adequately informed. And I think that complaint is correct. So I'm just simply saying I think this makes sense. I hope we can do a better job in the future. And this is the year to do greater. This should have been the year to do good information. We hope to do a better job next year.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Is it Ms. Stevens? You have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. I just had a quick question. Kathy Stevens from West Road. Tom, you mentioned free cash, and that would have...
We got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy Stevens from West Road. Tom, you mentioned a couple of times that we had an inordinate amount of free cash, and you mentioned planetary alignment. But my guess is that there's another reason why we have this free cash. And I wonder if you could tell me, and it's probably in here somewhere, exactly how much free cash there is in there. And is there any other things that you have earmarked for free cash, i.e. paying down the debt that the town has already, or perhaps giving more to schools or perhaps giving some back to taxpayers. I don't know where the free cash comes from.
I'll be glad to address that. Really good question. Currently, we have $342,757 in free cash. The reason, I just think that's huge. I know years that we've only had less than $100,000 when we're certified in the fall from the state. After they go through our records, less than 100. Normally in that 180 range, once in a while 200, but 342 is huge. What probably caused that for the state to certify that amount of money was probably some highway reimbursements that came in at the right time because they shut the year off the last day of June. Some reimbursements on highway expenditures that came in on Chapter 90 projects. Also, in the prior year, the tax collector was right at it, put tax liens and want to put some sales through, some tax taking type things that was able to generate a certain amount of revenue that we wouldn't anticipate again. One of the things we are spending free cash for in this budget is the town common was purchased on a 10-year note for $15,000 a year. This is the 9th year of $15,000. It was scheduled for 10 payments of $15,000 apiece. This is the 9th year. Fiscal 14 will be the 9th year. We're going to take $30,000 of that free cash and pay it off. Get that off the books. That's at a little bit higher interest rates than some of the other things that we're at. That was the biggest thing outside of this expenditure for the grade, the free cash. But our stabilization has never been, we've always had a stabilization, but some days the balance was so low it was hard to find, sort of deal. And I don't know what the perfect number is. We've had a lot of discussions about stabilization, and I feel it should be about 15% of our total budget. We're still going to be a couple $100,000, certainly short of that, but this is a great start.
Thank you. Further discussion on the grader? Yes, sir. Let me just say, if somebody wants to speak, come up and be prepared to take the microphone. We'll save a couple minutes.
Todd Atlantic, 561 Old Stage Road. Full disclosure, it's a dirt road. In the reading of the article, Mr. Carter said it was Mass General Law, Chapter 90, Section 21C, and my copy says Chapter 59. I'm wondering if you could clarify which it is. Just want to make sure it's done correctly.
Chapter 59. I have Chapter 90 is what I was referring to as the reimbursement.
When you read it, you said 90.
Okay, that was a mistake of the lips. Further discussion on the grader? Sir. Again, if you're going to speak, if you just come up here and line up, that will save the time from watching you walk up here.
Stay away from Alan Lilly, 1144 Watson's Cruise Corner. Mine's been tired for 3 times in the last 3 years. I appreciate everything the town does as far as road crew. Tom was on his crew, do a great job. But I'm getting to the point where there's probably 8 or 10 businesses in town that for some reason don't seem to have the money to be able to go out and buy a brand new truck. They're always looking for a second-hand truck, trying to make payments. I agree that the one is awful nice, but if you also agree, we've done this year after year after year. I shouldn't say it's Tom, but when Tom comes out and wants something, he gets it. And I'm a little bit disappointed the way this is and the way this came out as far as open meeting laws. We didn't know anything about this grader until a week ago. Now, this is ridiculous. The town, we have the Recorder Gazette, we have the Ashfield News. You know, I agree with, I had that little discussion with Mr. Knoll and Ted, and I appreciate the way they handled it. But I would like to see it being put off another year and not be quite so anxious to do that. We put $50,000 into the debt exclusion for the truck, and all of a sudden that keeps going on, and then have that extra $50,000 every year. I would like to see things be a little more fiscally conservative. And the next thing I'd like to know is if this gets defeated downstairs, is the finance board and the select board going to find the money from that $200,000 and put it in stabilization to do it like they did with the town truck? Can you give me an answer for that?
Thank you, Julie. Somebody wish to address that, Mr. Murray?
Ted Murray, Stroecker Road, which also is a dirt road, and we're at the end of the dirt road. And Alan is correct in the sense that he had talked to me as well as David, and I think all of us on the Finance Committee appreciate and recognize that we should have done a much better job of getting this information out to people through public outlets, the newspaper and so forth, because this is a big undertaking. There's no question about it. And I, at the same time, though, have the feeling that in some sense, as elected officials, you've asked us to somehow act in what we believe to be the best interests of the town. And to that extent, I think it's appropriate for us, nevertheless, despite having not done as well as we could have with publicity, to go ahead and recommend this. And I do this based on the following. Many of you perhaps have picked up a handout which has the first page saying, what is the debt exclusion? And the point that I think is very important to make here is the following. That if you look at this, there's first of all a one-page explanation from Tom Poisson about the particular need for a grader and some of the features that we think are important to have. It is a new grader that he seeks, and we appreciate that because in some sense we tried to use the grader from the military surplus, and that took a lot of work to recondition and apparently doesn't meet all of our needs. Whether we could have found another used grader that would be better, that's a fair question. And I think, you know, in some sense you have to accept that what we're seeking here is a new one, not a used grader. But most importantly, what I would call your attention to are the schedules at the back of that handout, which show two things, I think. The first is a projection of the capital needs for our town. Most of those are highway-specific pieces of equipment, but we have just estimated that the police department may at some point need the replacement of a cruiser. The fire department at some point may need the replacement of an engine or some augmentation of its equipment. The gist of it is that over the coming years, you can see that there are various estimates for what the town would need by way of capital equipment. And whether we push this one off, this grader, or not, you can see that at some point we're likely to need some piece of equipment, and we're trying to spread this out as carefully as possible so that we can afford it. And finally, the last page is one of debt service, where you'll see that we have various kinds of debt, and that as the years go on, some of these debts are being retired. Tom alluded to the town common capital cost. That will disappear this coming year. We're going to pay that off. Also the highway truck, which we financed under debt exclusion, that will expire this year. Which for us makes us feel that if we went to borrow the $150,000 balance we might need for this grader, that first year debt service would occur in fiscal year 15. So that in effect, that's a new amount of debt, but it comes in the wake of having retired nearly $80,000 in debt. So in some respects, this looks to us like a very carefully thought out and doable financial plan. And that's why I'm speaking on behalf of the Finance Committee. I would urge you to support this debt exclusion override.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman.
I can't speak to the process, but I can speak to the piece of equipment which 15 years ago, when it was beginning to be a little bit old, I worked a couple of days with Kurt Fischette rebuilding its transmission. I think it is quite possible that there's not a moving part on that grader that hasn't been replaced at one time or another. And of course, the time that it breaks is in the middle of a snowstorm. Kurt has done an extraordinary job over the years of keeping that thing running, and have made quick repairs in emergencies and much bigger repairs when there was time to go. And we should just remember the reality of the situation is that Kurt has retired. And not that we don't have good mechanics, but his knowledge of that piece of equipment and his expertise has kept it running for almost the 30 years that we've had it. If you're going to buy a piece of equipment that you hope is going to run that long, it should be a new piece of equipment. Something that you can project operating and operating reliably for as long as we need it.
Thank you. Highway Superintendent Tom Poisson.
Thank you. Tom Poisson, Premier Road. Minnesota Highway Superintendent. First, I will apologize for not getting an article in the Ashfield News. We have tried to get some information in the Ashfield News about the grader and other things about town meeting, and we had, the girls and I had the wrong submission date, so we missed it by a few days. So I take responsibility for that. I'll also tell you that Tom Poisson doesn't need a grader. You do.
Please don't.
One of the things,
the reason why we ask that you don't do that, even though I include that comment too, is that it might deter people who feel otherwise from speaking, and we don't want to deter people from speaking, so we ask that you not applaud or boo when you like or don't like something. Sorry.
I'm very concerned about the 10 out the schedule of replacing equipment. The last few years, because of budget constraints, we have been spending little. A couple years ago, we didn't spend anything for capital for the highway department. Last year, we only spent about $30,000 for a pickup truck. What's going on is some of the stuff is piling up. You have a 1994 dump truck scheduled to be replaced in 20 years. That's this year. We're putting that off. You have a 1985 John Deere backhoe that's scheduled to be replaced now. We're putting that off. So if we put off this grader, we're just compounding this problem. And some of you have to come through and say, now we need 2 or 3 pieces of equipment. So I think it's important to keep this on a schedule, to consistently replace capital equipment periodically and keep it spread out so that these costs don't come to us all at once.
Thank you. Any further? Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, Mr. Lilly.
Finance and Board of Selectmen answer my question about if it gets heated downstairs. I think
Okay, would you like to address that question? The question is, Mr. Lilly is requesting an answer to his question. If debt exclusion is defeated downstairs on the ballot, what are their plans?
I don't know if we have one. To be honest with you, we could bring it back at another election for another debt exclusion, hoping that it passed the same way that we ended up with that big fancy highway garage after 3 or 4 tries. Is that our plan? I don't know about that. As far as taking money from stabilization, you got to remember with the stabilization account, we're tying our hands. It only takes a majority to put it in. It takes 2/3 to bring it out, to use it for that. Okay? But what we're trying to do, Alan, and the rest of you, we've worked really hard to try to come up with a financial plan for the town so we don't get these big spikes and valleys, although it's a long time since we've seen a valley in the tax rate, but these big spikes and valleys, so we can kind of go along an even playing field. The calculations that I made Finance Committee seems to concur with me. If the budget pretty much passes the way we're presenting it today with the debt exclusion in fiscal 14, which starts in July 1st, the tax rate, if all the valuations remain equal, which they never do, but if all the valuations were equal to 13, the tax rate would go up 36 cents. And tax rate, I always say tax rate doesn't really mean a lot. It's what does it mean at my house? That would mean about $10 a month.
Anything further on the grader? Are we ready to vote? Okay, this will require a 2/3 town meeting vote, not to approve the approved. All those in favor of raising and appropriating $80,000, transferring from free cash to $5,000, borrowing up to $160,000 for a total of $285,000, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? In my judgment, we got 2/3. Does anybody disagree with my judgment? In which case we'll count. Hearing nobody, the motion carries by more than 2/3. Thank you. With your permission, or absent an objection, our superintendent of the Mohawk District, Michael Wongkani, is here to answer your questions, as is the business manager for the district, Joanne Blyer, and they have to get to another meeting. So I'd like to advance Article 7 in front of Article 6. Is there any objection to that? In which case we'll vote. Hearing none, Mr. Robinson.
Emily Robertson, Baptist Corner Road School Committee member. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate $1,896,594 to pay for regional educational expenses.
Thank you. I think I smell something coming. So their recommendation to the Finance Committee. Mr. Newell. Mr. Moderator.
Members hope to speak to this question at length, but the Finance Committee, by a vote of 3-0 with an abstention, recommend that the article not be approved. And we offer the following amendment to Article 7. And I move that we amend Article 7 as follows. I move that the town of Ashfield raise and appropriate the sum of $1,882,354, which is $14,840 less than requested and was the original amount proposed by the Mohawk Budget Subcommittee and the School Committee.
Okay, so there's a proposed amendment by the Finance Committee. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Newell, would you like to explain the basis for your recommendation that be amended to $14,240 less?
Thank you. Those of you who followed the Mohawk school budget process this year thought that it was dramatic. A lot of disagreement as to what should and should not be done. Considerable controversy over several programs. The self-involved independent, I think, called the process a little bewildering and confused. And I think I would have to agree with that. Adopting our concerns with the school budget are not with the amount of money involved, or we're capable of handling this increase. It is not related to our concerns that show that year after year the school budget is eating a larger and larger slice of the town budget pie. We could speak to other issues that have made us uneasy. For example, the net cost per student at Mohawk for fiscal 12 in other words, the impact that you have to pay out of the levy, is around $11,500 per student. Similar town as Shelburne, the impact is $9,300 per student. And it's 44% above what Charlemont taxpayers pay at $79 a student. The concern we have is procedural, and what we believe to be a matter of bad precedent. Regional school district budgets require 4 steps. The first step, after the budget subcommittee has done its work, is for the Mohawk Committee to adopt a tentative budget. And frankly, it was at that time that much of what we saw and heard at the public hearings regarding the peer education program and so forth, that should have occurred back then. After a school budget has been tentatively adopted, the second step is to bring it forward to a public hearing. The third step is after that public hearing has been concluded, the school committee then has the opportunity to approve a budget. And the fourth step is, after the budget has been sent to the towns, the member towns approve that budget. How this is done is a matter of law, and more importantly, a matter set forth within our regional agreement, which is the pact, sort of like the Constitution, as it were, of the school district. It is an agreement between the towns of Ashfield, Buckland, Charlemont, etc., regarding how school budgets are to be managed. The problem is, again, not our opposition to the numbers. The problem is going from the second step to the third step and adopting and approving the budget higher than was presented to the public officials at that public hearing. This really isn't the way to do business. We worked hard on this. We felt very conflicted, but we could not in good conscience recommend that you approve a budget that violates, in our judgment, the spirit and principles of the regional agreement. Never, in 50 years of regional school budget approval, for the many school districts we've had serving in the 9 towns, has anything like this ever happened. So we have decided to stand tall and take a courageous bold and say, we believe we should ask the school committee to go back to the drawing board and present a budget that makes sense, that comports with our regional agreement.
Thank you. Discussion on whether, on the amendment to reduce it by $14,260. Who doesn't have their hand up? Come here. Come over here and use the microphone. Thank you.
I'm speaking for myself here, select board, of course. But I agree with the finance committee that there were some protocol concerns that bothered me. But I would argue that you want to reject the amendment. And I have 3 other concerns. First of all, from a financial point of view, as David said, if you look since 2011, the increase of this $100,000+ amounts to about 1.1% increase annually. Okay, we've had a lot of good years. It's been a fun ride, and this year we got hammered. But the CPI and the rate of inflation is nearly double that. So, from a dollar point of view, I feel comfortable with what's before us. My biggest concern isn't the financial side. My biggest concern is performance. And Available to all of you through the DOE, Department of Education, are the results of the MCAS. And if you're a parent, you're going to make a lot of decisions based on the results of MCAS, whether or not you believe in the testing. And if you take the schools around us, Amherst, Frontier, Pioneer, Fore River, and you look at how we rank compared to them, I'm very, very concerned. Our overall school performance under the accountability data is 27, nearly a third out of 100, nearly a third of Amherst. And other schools like Frontier or Fore River, they're up around 72. Frontier's nearly double what Mohawk is. I'm concerned that if you take this $18,000 that the amendment is talking about here, I'm sorry, 14,000, thank you, that you're going to put an additional strain on the school system. And I think we need to improve our performance data. Third, and probably not last, is one of our concerns, and I was bothered by it too, was the last minute timing of this whole thing. It seems to me we went to a school committee meeting, a bunch of students stood up and said, no, you can't take away French, you can't take away English. But guess what? That was in the 11th hour. They were already in the 11th hour. I believe that meeting was in December. And the school board, in its wisdom, took a vote and to listen to these people and these concerned parents. And I've always ran on a platform that you stay out of the business of other duly elected officials. The school board took a vote to approve these monies. And I say, since they did it, and a very compelling argument must have been made to persuade them to do that, you leave it alone and reject the amendment.
Tom Atlantic, 561 Old Stage Road. I'm standing in opposition to the amendment. I appreciate Mr. Newell's points, and to his point, this is not a financial concern. It's a procedural one. And I think what we saw was democracy in action, part of the democratic process. I don't think there was, certainly not in recent memory, a more poignant manifestation of impact of a program in school than the leadership the students showed to organize and come before the school board and protest these cuts. Talk about a successful program, empowering these kids to do this. I don't think it should be cut. It's not a financial strain. We should pass the budget. Thank you.
I already introduced myself, I'm Emily Roberts, and I'm on the school committee, and I also wanted to address the procedure. There's nothing illegal about what happened. Again, it is unprecedented, and I want to liken it to what happens here in town government. We have open meetings to discuss the budget all the time. And yes, we wish people would come and give their input earlier in the process. I think some of the parents that came last minute have shown that they heard that message and are already getting involved for next year, and we really appreciate that. But again, you guys sit and discuss the budget throughout the year and wish that people would bring their concerns to those meetings, but yet we still have a town meeting now, and it's not unprecedented that you guys have come with a recommendation, and the town has changed that here at the last minute. And that's what happened. That's why we have the public hearings. Yes, I'm sorry that we invited you guys to have to weigh in on what you feel on the budget, and then the next meeting, when we actually decided to take into consideration what we've heard throughout the whole year, there was a change. I just want to also say that at a later meeting, the school committee did have a vote to rescind in case anybody had changed their mind. A lot of the towns wanted to push back, and we did not pass the rescind. We have this budget for you. There's nothing illegal about the process. So,
thank you.
Mary Link, Buckland Road. I also hope that we will not approve this amendment and go for the whole amount that's been asked.
school committee and schools. And just to say, I spent 7 years on the finance committee here. I spent 3 years on the budget subcommittee for the school district. I sat on both sides of the coin of figuring out how to make that work in the process. I know it well. I'm now employed by a competing school district. And one of the ways that school district has started coming back up and bringing some of its choiced out kids back has been by adding creatively, with hardly any money, adding new programs and keeping foreign languages and programs that are engaging the students. And I think when you cut those, you lose students. And we've already seen declining enrollment over the years. The school, you know, we've got data here on these pages for 5 years. When I was first on, it was 2002, and we started having cuts then from the state. And this town and all the towns in our region and the creative, amazing, competent work that Joanne and the superintendent do have stood us well. So I have no doubt about what they've done and the school committee has done to make this a reasonable budget, money-wise. And I just, to hold students who have stepped forward and taken leadership, I know some of the students that have been in this program, I've seen them grow over the last few years because of this program. We're putting $200,000 into stabilization for investing in our future. If we can't put this $14,000 in to keep a leadership development program in French in high school, that's a big investment in our future for a small amount of money, and it takes very little out of our pockets. I too have been up here on the table where we've made a recommendation and the town has changed that. That's our prerogative. They're trying to follow the law. We're not doing anything illegal. They have their position. My position is that we give the school the budget as requested and vote down some local children.
Thank you.
I'm Tamara Sloan, Phillips Road. I've got kids here at Sanderson and Mohawk. Two things. I'm against this amendment. And, you know, I was at several of these meetings, and I didn't go because I knew what was going on. I came because it was a community meeting, the first one where Lynn was holding. But there were, I wish you all had seen that. It makes me teary even talking about it, because there were kids, all these kids came, and they voiced their opinions, and they talked about how they felt and what these programs had done for them. There are kids who talked about how they felt like they'd never been heard before, and this gave them a chance to speak up and be good leaders and be good folks in our communities that we want. And I was so incredibly impressed with what they said. It was phenomenal. Wherever it came from, whether it was from those programs or because the school's been doing a great job all along, I don't know, but I was really impressed with what happened. And yes, it wasn't in the timely way that we all expected. And we need to change that. And we need to have the select board and the school and the finance committees involved also with the school boards and school committees when they're making these decisions. We all, frankly, need to be more involved in this process. But because it didn't happen in the best timely manner, that's not a reason to punish the kids who did this and to put this down. We need to vote for this. We need to support the kids in what they did. And secondly, I ask all of you, please, that's one small piece of a lot of complexity and a lot of challenge that our school district is facing. It's not a sustainable system, and we're on the edge of a cliff or a waterfall or a train wreck or whatever your analogy is. We have to figure out something else. The teachers are really stressed, and we need all of you involved. So if you come away from this, however you vote, please get involved. And start now. Come to these meetings and talk to us and talk to people about what are some other creative solutions that we can employ, because it's just not sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments on the motion?
Mr. Moderator, I would like to ask the superintendent a question. While the portion that belongs to Ashfield for this additional money was $14,260, it's my understanding the overall amount was $80,000. And the students were making a plea for French classes and peer leadership. Will that additional $80,000 be used for those two purposes?
Second. There's a request that a non-registered voter of Ashfield speak to the town meeting. Is there any objection?
The $80,000 that you referred to was brought to the floor specifically for those two programs. That's the intention that the school committee voted in favor of, for the reasoning for that $80K. So that would be the first place that the district would look to invest those funds.
Follow-up?
What would be the second place?
What would be the second
The second place, there is no just one second place. And if there's one thing I learned in 8 years of overseeing the Mohawk budget, it is the complexity of the budget itself. And a budget is a plan. And what happens between the time that the plan is approved and when the kids come through the door in September, it's always, always different. We always find a way to live within our budget. So the first place would be where the school committee directed those monies to go toward. The second place could be a number of places. And the first one that would come to my mind would be where we typically experience changes between the budget and the fall, which is typically special education for any new students that come to the district. It's not unusual, for example, to have foster children move into our communities with special needs. And those are not predictable expenses because they didn't live in our communities, but they come to us and we have a responsibility. So probably special education, but it would be wherever the needs of the district are.
Thank you. I saw a hand up. Mr. Murray.
Mr. Moderator, I rise to speak again in favor of the amendment that the Finance Committee has offered. I think what you've just heard from the superintendent speaks to the hazards of trying to, in some way, earmark additional monies to be invested in the educational process. And I think this is the type of additional last-minute supplements to budgets that the Finance Committee is most concerned about. This has, in my view, a concern because the Budget Subcommittee originally spent a great deal of time with the administration developing what they thought to be a competitive educational set of programs. And now you recognize, I think in clear terms, that any additional monies, this $80,000, albeit the intent perhaps of people to have it directed toward particular programs, is not necessarily going to all go to that. And as a consequence, what we've offered here is simply an augmentation of the school budget. And the other thing that I would take issue with in defending our amendment is the following. I'm concerned that the logic is running pretty strongly toward the notion that because we can afford it, we should do it. You're going to find that the Finance Committee at this morning's meeting on a couple of other occasions is going to caution us against being able to afford things and therefore just doing it. We have some concerns about whether this should be done time after time. And in our case, we would counsel against going beyond what the original budget presented at the public hearing was. We would suggest that you vote for and support the amendment. And as a consequence of that, I hope you will also take Ms. Sloan, Ms. Tamara's comments to heart and get more involved in the school process, because indeed, we have long-term issues with the school financing, and I think those need to be addressed by a lot of people. Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion to amend?
Eric Olson, Building Mill Road. I rise in opposition to the amendment. I support the original budget number. I think Tamara made some great points. I'd like to echo those with another point. Elimination of a foreign language would get the foreign language options at Mohawk down to 1. Therefore, our students would have less choice at a critical time in their educational development. It also would probably put Mohawk at a disadvantage when you think of parents thinking about choicing into Mohawk. They're going to look at options, they're going to look at the other districts where there are more choices in foreign language in particular. So I rise in opposition to the amendment, support support that, and I hope the town votes to support the original amount. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Yes.
Lauren Hussey Wells, Bailey Road. I'm seeking clarification on the fact that my understanding was that students have registered for French and peer leadership, and so that would lead me to believe that there has been an interest in a financial backing of those programs for next year.
Can someone answer whether students have registered for these?
When the students were so eloquently advocating for their education, it was really a beautiful thing to see. One thing that the district did make a commitment on, the principal goal was there, is that we would find a way to continue the programs. We couldn't make a promise that it would look exactly the same. And generally speaking, we can't make that promise for any of the programs. Most of our programs are modified a bit year to year based on a variety of factors, including level of student interest. And so it would be the same for French and peer leadership. So we made a commitment that we would continue forward in some capacity. So those programs were advertised, and the students were allowed to elect whether to sign up for those programs, which is information we need to figure out what are the possibilities. Lauren, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? Sir.
Andrew Kinsey, 488 Main Street, and I'm actually here to talk for my daughter Gracie, who is one of the students who was so adamant about maintaining, most specifically, the peer leadership program, but also French. And a lot of good points. I mean, I understand the Finance Committee's concern. It doesn't really make me feel like there's justice being done when you list the figures that we spend versus other towns. It also, the procedural things I understand. When we talk about graders and whether we buy a new one or an old one, there's priorities here, and there's long-term things that we're thinking about. Just so you all know, for those of you who weren't at the meetings, just what I know from my daughter, who's quite observant, intelligent kid, she believes that the peer leadership program saves lives. She's heard that from her peers. It's turned lives around. So if we're talking about procedures, if we're talking about changing at the last second, if we're talking about all these details, they're good points, but they pale in comparison to the intangibles of what can happen when a kid interacts with an adult and their lives are changed. And my concern is that with all the figures and the budgetary issues that we have, that we remember that it's the people that we maintain in schools, not the programs. That's the most important. So whether it's French or Chinese, I think it's the talent. And I just want you to know that the talent we're talking about at the school has saved lives. And that puts it, for me, in a totally different perspective.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Motion to amend. Mr. Miller.
Since regional school districts first came to the West County back in the early 1950s.
Is that microphone working? No.
Hang on. Phil Donahue to the rescue.
How's this? Okay. Since regionalization first came to public education in West County back in the 1950s, there have been about 150 regional school district budgets acted on by voters from these non-towns. I attended, as did other members of the Finance Committee, the public hearing on the budget and heard those students speak. as well as staff members. And were I on the school committee, I would have done exactly what the school committee done. I would support additional funding for pure education in French. No doubt in my mind. The problem with the process, I think, is bigger than you think. Because while the school committee had a legal right to do something, it did in the fourth step what should have been done in the first step. And if making so extraordinary a last-minute change, here's the point. The additional $80,000 should have been obtained through their contingency funds, through their excess and deficiency account, not thrust on the voters at the last minute. So again, we're taking a courageous stand here, saying there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things. The right way has been done for 150 regional budgets. This way is not the right way to proceed. It does not establish good precedent. It violates the spirit, if not the letter, of the regional agreement. So there's a right way and a wrong way. And I think you need to send the message to the school department and the school district and the school committee that we prefer in Ashfield to do things the right way.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
I'm Chris Rawlings at Dyer Road. I'm just a little bit lost in trying to understand what's going to happen as we vote on $14,000. I respect the Finance Committee as individual people that I know. I respect you. I understand about precedents, and I understand about there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. I'm listening to another person talk about a student who, you know, if precedence is really important, right? It's about, I understand the quality of that, but if the kids are suffering, that to me overrides, you know, precedence. I know what the school is up against with financial, you know, the challenges that are up against them, and I just want to understand better, like, if we're talking about $14,000 to really make a difference in the program, or are we talking about the precedence and the way that the school board handles its business and the way that the finance committee handles its business? So I need a little more clarification if we're going to vote on $14,000. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit not up to speed.
I think you're up to speed. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Okay.
Todd Land, 561 Old State Road. Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Newell's points about following the process and that this would be one way to send a message, would be to approve the amendment. Another way to send a message is to vote down the amendment, and the message would be maybe the process needs to be changed. Maybe the process that's being used needs to be modified. So there's more than one way to send a message. Okay, it's not that this process and procedure, because it's worked 150 times before, is the right way to do it. Maybe this means the process isn't quite up to speed to where people are.
Thank you. I always hate to do this because I always want to encourage discussion. I saw you, Mr. Murray. I'm going to point out that we're in the 6th article that we've considered today. We're on amending that article. I want to remind you that the superintendent and business manager have another meeting to go to, and we're still dealing with the amendment, but that's okay if we're still dealing with the amendment. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Michael Fitzgerald, Baptist Corner Road. In 1976, I went to a school committee meeting. It was a group of high school seniors. And the school committee did the right thing financially. They cut a lot of the courses that I considered important to my education. And I read earlier today that we've been whittling away at our school budgets for 5 years. And I'd say more like 30. This entire country has seen a decrease in education and a decrease in worker productivity for most of my adult life. And so what is the right thing here? Are we going to keep spending less and less on education, adding more and more economic problems? Or are we going to listen to the students when they show up and say, we need more courses here? How many courses aren't at Mohawk anymore, or aren't at Frontier anymore, that I took us up? Where's Latin? Where's German? Where's geography? How did driver's ed get privatized? We're not saving any money here on the school budget. We're taking it out of the pockets of the kids that graduate and become the workers. They're going to become our employees, our employers, and their incomes keep going down as we have fewer and fewer course offerings for them. This is how I see the education budget has evolved in the last 30 years. We had a big debate about Social Security a few years ago in this country, that it was going to matter whether we kept it on Wall Street or in the U.S. Treasury. What's going to matter is the earning power of these children and how capable they are as adults. Whether you can buy bread with your Social Security checks later on in life. Obviously, my voice is breaking. It's surprising. I didn't know I felt this strong about this. But I don't think procedure should hold this up. I think we should be working towards adding quite a bit more money than we're talking about if we want to have a strong economy in the 21st century. We should be adding 10% to our school budget. And I don't think we're going to solve this here. By any means, that's not what I'm suggesting. This is in the State House in Washington. This is going to solve it. But if you vote yes on this today, I think it'll probably be the best financial investment you make all year. Dollar per dollar. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. I saw your hand up.
Perhaps some clarification would be beneficial here. We hear about students suffering and the type of deficiencies that would result from not approving the school committee's recommendation for an additional $80,000. I guess my question is, of the superintendent, will peer leadership and French, which seem to be the two topics of greatest interest, be offered under a lower budget? If the amendment passes, and we approve the lower budget, would peer leadership and French be eliminated?
The commitment that the principal and I made back during the budgeting process was to continue it in some form or fashion. So neither program will be eliminated. It becomes an issue of resources and what those programs could be.
Thank you, Mrs. Stone. You may sit. If you'd like.
I just wanted to say that I have
Hold the mic closer. Hold the mic right up your mouth. There we go.
I have spent most of my life in education, and the last 15 years of it I was teaching at Leslie College graduate school, and I was liaison to many towns from Leslie to the school district. I even one time came to Ashfield, and that was a great joy to me. However, what I want to say to you is, the very thought of a high school language department offering only one foreign language is something that I never saw, even in a time when many things were being cut and times were difficult to pass budgets. But the idea, I'm glad we have Spanish, but that we would only have Spanish and not French as a strong language department in our high school. It would make us automatically an inferior high school. We have to pay attention to foreign languages because the world is getting smaller and smaller. And if kids don't have an very big difference in people's lives and in their command.
Are we ready to vote? On the amendments? Yes?
Yes.
All?
You make it clear what yes and no are.
That's what I was just going to do. All right, Mrs. Roberts' motion was to raise and appropriate $1,896,594 to pay for regional education expenses. The Finance Committee has offered an amendment reducing that amount by $14,240. Everybody clear on what you're voting for, whether or not to so reduce it by amendment? A yes means, rather than Mrs. Robertson's motion of 1,896,594, it would be 1,882,354, 14,240. A no means we go back to the main motion, which is Mrs. Robertson's for 1,896,594. Everybody clear? All those in favor of the motion to amend by reducing it by 14,240, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay. The noes have it. The amendment fails. We're back to the main motion, which is whether or not to approve the proposed budget of $1,896,594. Further discussion.
Phil Pless, Cape Street. I urge you to support the budget. We're going to talk about process. My concern with the process is that so much time has been spent on $80,000 for 2 programs. Whether the money is earmarked or not, it's all been about French and peer leadership. We need to put more effort into a $1.5 million transportation line item. That's where some effort needs to be put in. Not $80,000 in cutting teachers and programs, whether it's peer leadership, French, or what is it going to be next year. We need to look at, can we keep every single school building open? Some town is going to have to give up selfishness to make this sustainable. This $80,000 is not going to solve the long-range problem of our schools. How much administration can we afford? How much transportation can we afford? How many school buildings can we afford? That's the chart. That's the process the school committee needs to do in the future, not spend all this time on cutting French and peer leadership. Vote for the budget and let's move forward.
Any further discussion on the main motion? Mrs. Love. Right.
Yes, obviously, I urge you to support this as well, and I just want to take this moment to also say, again, please get involved. There's some handouts that some of us have given you with every town we're going to come and talk about these and come up with solutions, whether it be closures or not or whatever. We need your involvement. We need you to pass this budget now, and then we need you to not forget about it. We need you to come and stay involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote on the main motion? Okay. A yes vote means that you're approving $1,896,594 to pay for regional educational expenses. All those in favor say aye.
Point of information.
Point of information.
There's a little confusion at this table at the moment because we have 2 different numbers.
7 for
$1,896,906. The actual motion was $1,896,594. That was the motion. It's less than what was posted. It's within the scope. So as far as that information is clear.
motion that Mrs. Robertson made was less than the posted motion by a few $100, which is well within the scope of the posted article, so that that's the number, the one that was actually moved. Okay, all those in favor of $1,896,594 say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Passes unanimously. Do we need these services of the superintendent and business manager? Okay. So there's still in it as we go to Article 6, the prior article. Okay, is there a motion on Article 6?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the following sums of money to pay for school committee stipends, vocational school expenses, and educational capital expenses. Do I need to read those?
Well, I think everybody has them, but yeah, sure, read them.
School committee, there's 2 members on the school committee, $500 for a total of $1,000. Capital, $92,530. Vocational, $320,000.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to this?
I will.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, a couple points of information here, just for your knowledge. We have 6 students in the Smith Votech School. We have 9 students at the Franklin County Technical Schools. Both tuitions have gone up. We're not a member town of either of them, so we pay on a tuition basis. The good news about this budget was that appropriated in fiscal year 13 was $430,000, and we were faced with some conservatism in that line item because you never really know how many students are going to go to Votech. So we spent a lot of time reevaluating that and wondering if we were being too conservative, and we removed $80,000 and still have a conservative margin in there. So we're pleased to report that. I would like to say that David Newell did a remarkable job on some of the transportation issues on this. His past life and experience with the district and such really added a lot to our budget process. And I'm going to defer to him when he speaks on that. But that's the article as it stands.
Thank you very much. Recommendation to the Finance Committee.
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee recommends for this unanimously for number 6.
Thank you very much. Discussion. You ready to vote? Look, Mr. Carey.
Karen Carey, this Tate Row Road, is this working? If you divide 21 students into the numbers that come up to $21,000 per student per bookend, if that's my math right. And whatever it is, how does that compare to how much we pay for students who go to Mohawk or other schools?
Thank you. Mr. Newell.
Well, good question. One of the tricks, though, is that you're going to be comparing some apples to some oranges. The cost that I mentioned earlier, $11,000 to $12,000 per student for Mohawk, that's the impact on your taxes. The cost that you're looking at here for vocational, whether it's at Smith or Franklin Tech, we're really looking at tuition rates, in the $17,000 range per student. But the town also receives direct state aid, Chapter 70. So that offsets a good chunk of that cost. And the last time we made a comparison, we did a study of what's the apples to apples comparison in terms of per student cost on the net. The last time we looked at it, it was a little bit less expensive for kids to go to the vocational schools. We haven't done a recent check on it. My guess is it's probably going to be pretty close to a wash. Does that answer your question? Oh, one other thing is also the transportation expense. We also receive some reimbursement for the expense involved in sending our kids to Tech and to Smith. So again, that's another offset that we need to be taking into account. We're hoping that for next year that we can do a better job of overseeing this, what's called a non-operating school department. In Ashfield, we still have a school department, and we have a school budget, a town school budget, and that's what you're acting on right now. You may be hearing more from the Finance Committee and the Select Board later, because one of the problems we're looking at right now is we no longer have an Ashfield School Committee. We have 2 representatives to Mohawk. And so we've started a discussion, a conversation as it were. What's the best way for the town to manage and oversee these programs? More later.
Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor of raising and appropriating the sums that were read and that are on your warrant to pay for school committee stipends, vocational school expenses, and educational capital expenses, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Yes, Superintendent would like to say something.
Good morning, everybody. We got into the school budget to a different track than we normally do. I just want to say thank you. It's been 8 years of serving with the school district, and it really has been an increasing pleasure for me, and I so enjoy working with each other. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Listen, folks, with your permission, I'd like to advance Article 11 in your post-district warrant. And I'm saying that because we have a person with a lot of expertise to offer it if we need it, waiting, and would rather not wait till after lunch. I understand she waited in the meeting quite late the other night. So, any objection to advancing Article 11? Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Moderator. Title Land 561 Old Stage Road. I move that the town authorize the select board to enter into renewable energy purchase and/or net metering credit purchase agreements, including solar energy and related net metering credits for terms of more than 3 years, and to take all actions necessary to implement and administer such agreements.
For a second.
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion and explain what we're talking about here?
Okay, so I'm a member of the Sewer Commission, and the Sewer Commission was approached by HCOG with a program that they have available to them.
What is HCOG?
Hampshire Council of Governments. It is a energy purchasing program, electricity, whereby people who sign up for it can get credits to purchase solar produced energy at at least a 21% discount over the current electric rate. So the town will be able to buy solar electricity at a 21% discount over what we're paying for now for whatever source it comes from. And through the meetings that we've had with HCOG and the developer, which is called, the name of the developer is Nexamp, we may very well, it's very likely that we will be able to get an even larger discount than 21%. And that's off the bottom line cost of electricity. So whatever the bill says, this is how much you owe, we'd be able to purchase credits for at least 79 cents on the dollar to pay our bill.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee here? Mr. Nolan.
Mr. Moderator, at the time the Finance Committee reviewed this article, we had insufficient information, not enough data, and were unable to arrive at a decision. So we have no recommendation on this article.
My understanding here is that we're just being asked to authorize the select board to engage in the investigation and determination.
Correct.
We're not
Town
directing.
council would do all due diligence, town council would be required to do all, due diligence and make sure that the town's protected in any way, et cetera. But this is just to authorize the select board to enter into an agreement if it's right for the town.
Okay. Discussion, yes. Mr. Schreiber.
Yes, Tom Schreiber, Watson Road. As I'm reading it, it says it's authorizing the select board to actually enter into an agreement. Correct. Not just to authorize them to look at it. Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding is the language here, it doesn't direct them to do so, it authorizes them to look into it and if they so choose to enter into an agreement.
Okay, because previously you said that you hadn't mentioned that they could.
That's my first mistake today. That's okay. Won't be mine. If we need Mr. DeHert. I would just point out that here from the New Hampshire Council Meeting Government and Renee LaRouche, should we need her services or information, she is here. As she speaks French.
David Rickett, 7 Meadow Lane. My question is on the article, it's just that you're authorizing a particular select board to enter into agreements that have terms exceeding 3 years, which is, I see, kind of problematic because you're tying the hands of future select boards to renegotiate or consider the terms of the contract, whether they remain in the best interest of the town down the road. I just wonder why those terms were included in the
I can speak to that. The reason why those terms were included in the article is because the contract with the solar developer would be for 20 years. In order for the solar development project to be viable, that's their timeline and their financials. So they have to sell all the credits, all the energy produced from this particular solar development over a period of 20 years, and they get people to sign into the particular development they're doing and purchase those credits for that period of time. So it would be a 20-year commitment to saving money, a 20-year commitment to paying less for our electricity, a 20-year commitment to producing less greenhouse gas, etc.
Other discussion? Yes, Mr.
The law in terms of length of contracts indicates that the select board on its own may not enter a contract longer than 3 years. And that's why this would come to the town meeting. We do this on a very regular basis for exclusions, equipment uses, etc. But they come to town meeting for permission rather than having the select board itself vote for something of longer than 3 years. The other question that I would hope that the select board would look into is in terms of the cost of electricity. It was indicated in the discussion that it would be a significant reduction over the cost of solar energy. How does it compare to the cost of the normal energy that we purchase? Is there a reduction on that also?
So the reduction would not be on the cost of solar energy. The reduction would be on the cost of electricity. Okay, so we'd be paying 21% at least less on our electric bill. Does that answer your question? Were you listening?
Yes, I was.
It's 21% less across the board for the cost of electricity. So we would be buying these credits, however many credits we wanted to pay for towards our electric bill. Of course, it's electricity, that's 79 cents on the dollar.
The town has already entered into an agreement with the Hampshire Council of Governments, the electrical aggregation section of that some years ago. And will these discounts be in addition to the discounts that we're already getting?
Bonjour.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Would you just
Regarding,
introduce yourself, please?
yes, my name is Anne Renee Nabush. I'm with the New Hampshire Council of Governments.
Any objection to this non-Ashfield registered voter speaking? Thank you.
Regarding the discount, the municipal aggregation and this program that we're just talking about is called Hampshire Solar. Hampshire Solar serves municipalities. It will serve any municipal account. So those are municipal buildings, schools, wastewater treatment plant, things like that. Whereas the municipal aggregation program serves residents and businesses. So those are completely separate programs.
The agreement that we have on municipal buildings, the agreement that we have on municipal buildings only, it's the one that we signed 8 years ago or thereabouts. You have another program which is being offered to allow residents to buy discounted electricity, but this town has not joined that yet.
Oh, okay.
So I'm again asking whether this is separate and in addition to the municipal contract that we already have in place.
The municipal aggregation program is completely separate from what you have in place.
What we have in place is the municipal aggregation program. So it does not include residents.
Well, I'm sorry, but...
All right, and usually we don't like a discussion, but I'm learning too.
Right,
So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and I will follow up by Mr. Perlman because it seems to be very familiar with this.
So Article 11 that you're voting on now regards accounts that are municipal accounts. And that would allow you to save 21% on the cost of electricity for a period for the entire length of the contract, which is 20 years. And as the rates go up, it'll be 21%, so the savings will be even greater. And let's see. And as Todd mentioned, Nexamp was offering a very sweet deal to the town of Ashfield. And, you know, we'd be happy to come back and talk to the Board of Selectmen about the program. And if you vote yes today, you're not voting for the program, you're voting to allow the Board of Selectmen to make a decision about it. So, obviously, I strongly encourage you to vote yes.
Thank you. Another sewer commissioner.
Nancy Hoff, Spruce Corner Road, also sewer commissioner. I realize I shouldn't make Todd do this on his own, but he is more eloquent on this particular topic. But I'll speak to the generalities that we were approached as a sewer commission. Did we like this idea? And we did. So then we started inviting the greening committee in town. And we realized that there was no way we could enter a contract with this organization without coming to the town. But all our research is not done. So we're asking permission. Can we keep moving? We didn't want to wait for a whole we could do all our research and come to you next year, but we didn't want to miss out on this opportunity. So we're coming to you now to get permission to keep moving forward. And if we get something really good, then ask the select board to sign it. We're just asking permission to move forward. We think it's a good deal. The greening committee's behind it. I think it's a win-win. Try not to get too hung up on what we're asking the select board to do today and this and that, but help us move forward.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Carter.
As far as this article goes and asking the select board, or authorizing the select board to sign into this long-term agreement, what I would envision and strongly urge is that we pass this article, and then we can move forward with the sewer commission to gather all the information, so we have all the details that we can see, have town council perform due diligence on the contract, and then before we make a decision, I would strongly urge that the select board have a public hearing advertised so we can say, these are the details, this is where we are, this is where we're going to end up, and this is how we're going to do it before the select board makes the decision. I think that is the consequence of a yes vote on this article.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of authorizing the select board to enter into a renewable energy purchase, net metering credit purchase agreements, including solar and related net metering credits for a term of not more than 3 years. Take any action necessary to implement that, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
You made it not.
More than 3 years. Did I say not? Yes. How many mistakes is that? For more than 3 years.
Read the whole article over, please.
I don't want to, but I will. Yes. All right. Authorize the select board to enter into renewable energy purchase and/or net metering credit purchase agreements, including solar energy and related net metering credits, for terms of more than 3 years, and to take all actions necessary to implement and administer such agreements. Say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt, this is not a point of order, but a point of information from downstairs. There is no sound, they can't hear the microphones at all. They haven't heard any of the meetings so far. So,
Sorry, maybe during break. All right, but for those of you who are up here and can hear, I would just tell you that if I let the microphone drift under the table, the growling you hear would be coming from our clerk. Because the pizza has been delivered. However, here's my proposal. I propose that we, I'm sorry. My proposal is, okay, Mrs. Robinson. Some people downstairs don't want to hear. I've just heard. No. So that's it. But serious now, it's always a question when we should break. We have 28 articles. I think done 8. What I would propose that we try to do is go through articles 8, 9, and 10 and see whether if any of them take longer for us to discuss. And if we think that maybe we'll just stop there so we can all have lunch and hopefully come back. So is there a motion to Article 8?
Yes, Mr. Miller. This one is working. First, let me apologize for all the sniffling and nose blowing. I have a very ill-timed cold. I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $500 to the Historical Commission for the purpose of celebrating the founding of the town and the town hall building.
Is there a second?
Second.
Would you like to explain this?
Great.
Yes.
Steve Goodyear, Holland Road, the chair of the Historical Commission. What we're looking at basically for coming up in the next couple of years is the town hall right now was started, the date up front is 1812. It was actually occupied in 1814. So coming up next year, the 200th anniversary of the town hall building. Also, the following year, in 15, is the sesquibicentennial, 250th anniversary of the town of Ashfield. So the Historical Commission is looking to get basically some seed money so that we can start to plan some events, first for the town hall, and then kind of continue to roll that into the 250th for the town. So this is basically to kind of get us going with printing, maybe lining up speakers, photos. That's it.
That's good. Sesquicentennial.
Sesquibicentennial.
Is that right?
Sesquibicentennial.
I keep learning.
I'm going to ask for the Finance Committee's recommendation, but I do want to point out that by statute, it looks like, can't read my writing, General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5, subsection 27 and 27A, this requires a 2/3 vote for any expenditure involving a celebration of the town's anniversary or the like. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, Finance Committee recommends this unanimously.
Thank you very much. Discussion. That's easy. All in favor of raising and appropriating the sum of $500 to celebrate the founding of the town and the town hall building, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Passes unanimously, and thank you to the Historical Commission. Article 9, is there a motion? This is there.
Pat Bear, Baptist Brewer Road, and I am the representative from Ashfield for the Highland Ambulance Board of Directors. I move that the town raise and appropriate the following sums of money to pay for national service: Highland assessment, $31,053, and radio assessment, $1,877.
Is there a second?
Second.
Would you like to explain?
We have gone up this year for the first time due to a number of factors. Total operating assessment for the town of Ashfield is $34,135. The total assessment for the 6 towns is $146,000, which is up from $129,000. And part of the reason for that is that our transports and donations have remained flat. And that doesn't help us with increased gas prices, maintenance and that sort of thing. We've had an $8,600 increase in health insurance for our employees. That's because we went from 1 family and 1 individual policy up to 2 family policies. Also, we were fortunate enough to get a $77,000 grant, which we will be using to get 2 new cardiac monitors, which will bring us up to what the current technology is available and what we need to stay close. So with this grant, it puts us over $500,000 in anticipated revenue, which means that we need a full audit, which we've not budgeted for. We've never had that. We've been fortunate before, but that's going to cost us an additional $5,000. So those are the reasons for it. For the total per capita assessment for Ashfield, it's $19.78 per person for paramedic coverage, which I think is a pretty good deal. Any other questions?
Let's hear from our Finance Committee, and maybe get us here in case there are. The recommendation from Finance Committee. Mr. Schreiber.
Yes, Mr. Moderator. Tom Schreiber, Watson Road. The Finance Committee recommends it 4-0-0.
Thank you very much. Discussion. Yes, sir.
Can I do this right from here? It's just a quick question.
Would you please stand? Alan Lilly. He's still Alan Lilly.
Alan Lilly, Watson Spruce Corner. I just had a question as far as this is the ambulance service. I've used it quite a bit. And it's not just Highland that comes, it's the fire department and everybody. And are they compensated, or is there any expenses, or is that come under the fire department? No, I just see you have the Highland thing, but there's nothing for. Is that all volunteer?
I believe it's all volunteer. It's a first responder setup situation where the local responders can get there first, and then the ambulance responds as quickly as it can with the backup support and equipment is on the ambulance.
So do we have any supplied equipment here in Ashfield as far as like?
Really, with the fire department. That's who the fire department is, as my understanding.
I will add that I think this morning there was a new rescue vehicle just delivered to our fire department, but it's a problem.
The responders, when the fire department do get compensation, we are not a volunteer department, we are a call department. And technically, so that there is compensation given to the first responders We try to keep the number that come to a minimum to preserve the budget, but except for very rare examples, the first responders are first on the scene. So they will stabilize things and wait for the ambulance to come.
Thank you. David Bill? Any other discussion? You ready to vote? All those in favor of raising and appropriating the $31,053 for the hygiene assessment and the $1,277 for radio assessment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Mrs. Baker. Article 10. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Murray.
I move that the town transfer from free cash $3,000 to pay for the reserve account.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Would you like to explain what that is?
This is a small amount of money which is traditionally used annually to varying extent by the Finance Committee to simply balance the books at the end of the fiscal year. As we come into the end of June, there are often a few accounts that are over by a small amount, and we use this $3,000 to adjust at our discretion the accounts and get them to balance so as to preclude any need for a special town meeting. Save for the effect that if we are needing more than $3,000, then we would have to come back to the town. But this generally allows us to do that final cleaning up of accounts at the end of the year.
I predict this will be the dumbest question I ask today. Is there a recommendation from the finance?
Mr. Moderator, Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
I had it the other way, but discussion. Ready to vote? All in favor of authorizing a transfer from free cash of $3,000 to pay for the reserve account, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimously. Thank you. Now, my inclination at 12:30 is to break for lunch because I've been asked to. But it is your decision, not my decision. All right. Is now a good time to break? Anybody disagree? Okay. If we come back at like 20 after, is that a good time? 20 after 1. Okay. We will suspend till that time. Thank you very much. Hope to see you then. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a couple announcements, please. Bear with me for 1 second. I just have to find it. Okay, one has to do with the survey. I have to find it. There's a survey out in the foyer. Hold it. Give it
There's a open space planning survey on planning. The town require close to deadline, like to get as many survey responses. You can fill it out now and put it in the box. You can take it with you, send it back, drop it in town hall, drop it to neighbors, drop it at the hardware store. The second thing is there is an MIT student who I believe has come out to Ashfield, requested that we make an announcement that she would be outside town hall or downstairs at lunch outside the area, and she may approach you. She's doing a doctoral dissertation on town meetings and was hoping to get some people to take a very short set of questions.
She said it's incredibly short. It takes a couple of minutes. She's trying to, they're researching who does and doesn't come to town meeting, who participates in town meeting. So she asked if we announce that the survey is going on. And there you go. So thank you. See you at 25